So here's the update for the garden. It's been a while, I think probably close to a month since I did the last one. Things have really started to grow well here. We had quite warm weather, a lot of sun, not much rain, so I have started to water. I've been watering now about 2 weeks. I've been going every other day, every other evening with it to try to keep things growing and green. But what you can see the improvement since the last time I reported on this. Let me walk you through this fairly quickly. The sweet peppers, the bell peppers, are growing well. In fact, my wife probably took a half a dozen off of the plants today already, and there's a lot more to come. They are growing nicely. Remember, these peppers, the broccoli, and the cabbage in the distance there, these were all from the Veggie Boys. I had told you about that earlier, that I got some seedlings from them because I had needed some, because my usual source didn't have them. And these broccoli plants were great all year. They've been growing like crazy. I mean, this one right here is probably a good 2 feet tall at the top of the leaves. But there was nothing on them. There was no heads at all throughout the summer. Now maybe that's the way it normally is. I'm still learning about broccoli. But in the last couple weeks, as you can see, just to give you an idea of size here, they are starting to put out some pretty good sized broccoli heads. So I'm looking forward to a fairly decent harvest, I think. Don't know if I'll get in all of them, but some of them are a little slower than others. But I also have some that are doing fairly well for me here. I mean, I want to get them before they bolt to seed. It's supposed to be a cooler week this week, so that might help avoid that. But it should be a decent broccoli harvest. Then the cabbage, I told you I'd lost a few. Some didn't quite make it, but the ones that are here, they are starting to form heads. I was out here the other night watering, and you could certainly smell that cabbage smell. And hopefully we'll get some decent cabbage out of this. Cabbage are more of a late season crop normally, so I expect there'll be a lot more growth done before I have to worry about harvesting. Here I had planted a couple summer squash. They're finally coming here, a lot of blossoms. I picked the first summer squash off this one today, and there are a couple more coming there. This zucchini plant has a zucchini on it. I've already taken 3 off of this. That's still coming, so I'm happy with that. Sometimes these plants just want to be blighted right away and they just don't want to grow well. Over here I planted, this is a pumpkin vine with the little decorative pumpkins. I always like to do those because the kids love them, grandkids and stuff like that, and they're easier to grow than the regular pumpkins. It was late, so I don't know what kind of harvest I'll get, but you know, they're in. Let's go over here to the pole beans. As you can see, they have really taken off. I've already picked maybe a quart or so of beans off of these, and they're still in the very beginning stages. You can see all the blossoms that are on here. I mean, if all these blossoms give me a bean, I'll have a decent harvest. As you can see, I probably can do some more harvesting. If not today, tomorrow. There are a lot more that are coming. And they're doing very well. They're doing very well. They climbed up the trellis again. Still have a problem with the weeds in there, but until I can figure out a way to, you know, just plant plastic, or you plant them through plastic or something so the weeds can't grow up. It's almost impossible to try to keep weeds out. I try to hand pull them as I can. But these guys climbing up to the sky to get sunshine and light are doing very well for me, so I'm happy about that. In fact, as you can see here, the top of my trellis here is about 5.5 feet, and this thing is probably up to a good 7.5, almost 8 feet if I stretch it straight up. So the pole beans are doing great. I try to wrap them around so that they, you know, grow on the trellis rather than in the air like that, but that doesn't always work, so whatever. But they're doing pretty well. I'm happy with them. Fought some battles with the cucumbers again this year. Some of the early ones blighted on me, and then I replanted from seed. Now they still look sort of blighted, but there are lots and lots of blossoms on these. These are the ones that I planted from seed, and if I get a decent amount of, these are pickling cucumbers, if I get a decent amount of pickling cucumbers from all these blossoms, I'll be thrilled. I've picked maybe 3 or 4 pounds of cukes off of them so far, but not quite enough to do a whole batch of pickles. On the other side, you can see the slicing cucumbers are growing up the vines, up the trellis pretty well. That's what I wanted them to do. That's why I put them here this year as an experiment. I've got to do better with that next year. But if I can get my cucumbers, now this is one of the original pickling cucumber plants that survived, and you can see how it's growing up the trellis here, and has blossoms on it. So I'm thrilled about that. Another one there, that's one of the slicing cucumbers. And over here, I think I have my first slicing cucumbers starting to grow. So again, usually these things are much earlier in the summer, but because of it being so wet and miserable, I just couldn't get them in the ground and have them grow. So everything is very late. But the beans and the cucumbers, the growing seasons aren't that long, so they have time to recover yet. Up here you can see I had planted a few rows of sweet corn. I don't know how well that'll show up again. There's still a lot of weeds in there. This fifth row I planted later, that's why it looks smaller than the others. I've been trying to keep this watered fairly well, because as these plants have tasseled, that's when the cob development happens, so you have to keep the ground moist so that the cobs form well. I don't know how well this is going to do. I do see some cobs starting here. As you can see here, it's going to be a few weeks till they all fill out. And if it's going to stay dry, I'm going to have to keep them watered pretty well, or it's not going to amount to much. Just wanted to taste the sweet corn. I didn't go all out like I've gone in the past. And this is the Honey Select variety, a very good, sweet, decent sized cobs in a good growing season. So I planted these here. And in amongst some of these weeds here, here's my potato patch. You saw me talking about this earlier. You can see the onions that I put along the perimeter. Some of them are doing pretty well. The potato plants themselves are pretty good. I have a few bare spots in there. I'm not sure why. Did that Ruth Stout method of just cutting them into pieces, throwing them on the ground, and covering them with hay. And you can see how well that they're growing. Some of them have already finished their blossom cycle, which is good. I'm probably looking at maybe 3 weeks yet till some of the plants start to die off, maybe a month. But potatoes go into the fall too, so I should get a decent potato harvest. I'll try to report on that when I'm doing it. But they have a way to grow yet too, but they seem to be working out pretty well. I did Yukon Gold and Eva here, I think half and half. I can't remember which I put on which side. The Yukon Gold are the yellow potatoes, the Evas are large white potatoes, so we'll see how that goes. But the flavor I've gotten in the past from them have been pretty good. So then we come down here quickly to the tomato plants. This has been a struggle and a battle for me, because I'd never got a chance to really get them covered with newspapers and hay, so I've been dealing with the weeds. I've also been trying to push them with Miracle-Gro for tomatoes. A little bit of problem with some early blight, but I've also been starting to do some harvesting. You can see some of them are starting to turn. I think I probably picked maybe 2 dozen tomatoes so far, the bigger tomatoes so far, and I got more coming. I need to have a lot more coming because we want to do tomato sauce like we usually do, spaghetti sauce. So we'll see how they all turn out. Some are smaller than others here, but I usually have that. So we'll keep working at them, see how we end up with our tomato harvest, and hopefully we'll have enough to maybe do the tomato juice and the tomato sauce, spaghetti sauce that we want. I'm not going to worry about doing salsa or tomato soup this year. This mess here is a volunteer tomato plant that came up. This is the pile of chicken manure over here. It just came up on its own, and it's kind of taken over everything. I've pulled a few tomatoes out of there already. I'm not sure what the variety was, but they're doing pretty well considering they grew up on their own. And I have more. These are larger tomatoes. On both sides here, these are, I think that was Big Boy on the other side, and on this side I think they were Goliath. Some of them didn't make it, like I told you before, because they kind of drowned early on in June. But some are still doing pretty well. I've done an awful lot of tying up so that they stay off the ground as much as possible to keep the bugs out and to keep the blight out. On the other side of this trellis here, as you can see, they're coming over through the trellis are the grape tomatoes, and I've been picking a lot of them. I've probably picked close to a gallon out of them, and they're still very early on yet. You can see there are a lot of smaller green ones. You can see there's a lot of yellow blossoms that they haven't even started yet. So this will be another successful harvest with them. This is a banana pepper that my wife got from a friend who asked could we plant it for her. And you can see the banana peppers on there. I'm not familiar with banana peppers all that much. I'm not sure exactly how big they need to get or how healthy they need to look. And it also looks like to me that she mixed in some jalapenos. I'm not sure if these are. Again, I'm not an expert on it. I think they're jalapenos as opposed to just a different kind of banana pepper, but I could be wrong. She had labels on them, but that doesn't mean the labels were correct necessarily. But they're growing, so that's all I care about. Here I've got 2 rows of wax beans. Started to pick from them. As you can see, there's more to be picked. I think I'm going to have a good harvest out of them. I'm going to have to blanch and freeze some green beans real quick this week, I think, because they're coming pretty good. And then down here, the disappointing thing is, tried some later corn. This is very late corn. This was nectar, the really sweet stuff, and it was spotty the way it came up. And I did some replants, and even some of the replants didn't come up right. It wasn't a weather thing. It wasn't a soil thing. It was just a seed. I don't know if they didn't do a good job in the creation of this hybrid, that it just isn't as robust as it should be. I know the years that I've had some of them that I got a decent harvest, the flavor is unbelievably sweet, very good. Not the greatest or not the largest cobs, but they are decent cobs. So and if you can get them, you won't get a better flavored sweet corn than that, than this nectar, at least that I've ever had. So I don't know if I'll get anything out of this yet. Probably is going to depend on how soon or how late the frost is this year. Usually we get frost where I am maybe mid-October, so that gives me about maybe seven at the most 8 weeks before I have to worry about frost yet. I'm hoping that most of this garden will mature and can be harvested in that time, so I don't lose all this work. It was a frustrating year, but you know, if you're doing farming or gardening, you understand that sometimes the weather doesn't cooperate. I can deal with dry weather. All I have to do is do extra watering. But wet weather, there's not much you're going to do. If the soil is mud, it's mud, and you can't till it, you can't plant it, you just got to wait until it dries out. And as I've said here many times, this is heavy clay soil, so when it gets wet, it gets wet. It doesn't drain off well. And it's not like I have a lot of other places here on my place that I could put a garden that's so much better drained. And if I do try to go like on a hillside, right now everything's bone dry on the hillside, so it doesn't make any sense. You take what you get and you do the best you can. That's the way it's always been with anybody who's ever stuck seeds in the ground or plants in the ground to try to grow them. So, but I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. This is great. It's great satisfaction to be able to pull your own food out of your own garden that you've worked hard to put together and maintain. I'd like to be more neat in how I do it, but I'm doing the best I can right now with the equipment I have, and we will just continue to plug our way through until we get to the end of the harvest. I'll probably give a final update so that you can see what else is happening. I've got another video that I want to drop shortly. The grapes are all ripe now. In fact, some are even past their peak already. Because of it being a second half of the summer being hot and dry, they matured more quickly than I expected. So I've already picked probably maybe 7-8 pounds of grapes so far, and I've got a lot more to get. As I've shown you in the past, they're along the fields here around the edges, and so I'm working on those. I'll give you a video on that so you can see what's going on with that. We did 21 quarts of grape drink on Saturday, my wife and I, and I've talked to you about those before, and we'll have more reports on that because I'll probably be doing more this week. So it's a busy time getting the rest of the firewood in, getting the garden harvested, keeping the weeds down enough so that you get a decent harvest, keeping everything watered that it doesn't dry up. But the end result is going to be a lot of good fresh food to get us through the winter stuff that we can't eat fresh. We'll put in the freezer and have decent quality food. And Saves a whole lot of money from the grocery store, let me tell you that. All right, thank you for watching. Thank you for liking our page. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for your support. It means the world to me that we've been able to be as successful with this as possible with my limited equipment, my limited experience. But it's a way that we can share what our life is here living out in the country and doing it on a shoestring. Again, thank you so much for your support.